So let's get into what we normally start off our show with. We're going to get into the defect of the week. So the defect of the week this week, we're going to be talking about deck systems. And we come across decks that have lots of problems with their systems. And decks are something that lots of times we'll see homeowners get into trying to do their own decks and that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? However, when you do your deck wrong, it can be catastrophic, not only like financially, but it can cause lots of personal injury and all kinds of stuff. Peter, can you bring up the computer? So when a deck is not built properly, what you're looking at is a system that will fail. Okay, it's just a matter of when and how. Okay, so deck systems are constructed with different pieces and elements in mind to make sure that the system is going to be secure, it's going to be safe, it's going to be functional, and all that kind of jazz. And when it comes to the decks, probably the most key pieces that we need to be concerned about are points where we're attaching to structure, where we're supporting loads and weights. Okay, so we're talking about your ledger board, we're talking about your switch the computer. We're talking about your beams and column systems and stuff like that. Here you can see on this picture it's
a beaut.
Yeah, so this is where the ledger board would have been, not properly attached to the house. They still have the vinyl siding underneath the wood. I mean, seriously, wow, come on. You know, just pretty crazy. This one, the ledger board not attached to the house properly, and the bottom of the deck. Could you imagine if you had your family and friends out on that thing? Holy man! I mean, not only is it a lawsuit, coming your way. I mean, right, from many insurance companies and stuff like that, but you're going to be all kinds of problems here. And this person, you can see that by the way that they attached their beam to their column, they didn't know what they were doing. You can see the ledger board wasn't attached properly. At least here they took off the siding, and put the piece of wood on there. But
some 3M tape to hold it on.
I don't know, duct tape, man. Yeah, another one, ledger board falling off, and the beam not supporting the loads. So many horror pictures out there of bad deck systems. Okay, if you're gonna build a deck, start the process correctly. Okay, yes, you can go to Menards. Yes, you can go to Home Depot. Yes, you can talk to the 16-year-old kid that works in the lumber department and ask them questions about decks. Is that the person I would trust? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. You want to get a hold of a deck professional or something like that to at least have them help you draw up a plan. Okay, if all they are there to help you is draw up a plan, you're going to be a step ahead and not making the types of mistakes that will lead to a catastrophic deck failure. Okay, when it comes to building your deck, there's lots of good information out there. You can learn a lot and all that kind of stuff, but start the process correctly by getting a building permit. Okay, once you start that building permit process, you are going to be required to build in the basic safety features that need to be present in your deck. That building inspector is not going to let you get away with not building your deck safely. They're not there to hinder the process. A lot of people, I don't want to, they're at the pain in the butt. They just want to get my money. Okay, in some cases, yes. When a building inspector wants $25 to inspect you putting in your garbage disposal, yes, that's a bunch of hot BS. Okay, they should not be. That's ridiculousness. However, when it comes to decks, when it comes to home construction, when it comes to roof replacement, those are great areas where you need to get that building permit to make sure that it's being done properly and meeting basic safety expectations. The building permit is just checking for the basics that need to be present in a safe deck. Okay, when it comes to decks, there's a lot of pieces and elements that are built into it to make sure that the deck stays stable, okay? Especially if you're doing an elevated deck where you're up, 10 feet off the ground or whatever,
right,
which you see all the time, okay? If you're building a deck that far off the ground, you got to take into account, how you're attaching the house and the deck to each other. If you aren't, you can't just drive a couple of screws in. If you're not careful with that, you're going to end up with one of these catastrophic depth situations where the house is falling away from the building, okay? So when we talk about attaching the house to the deck, okay? So here you can see where we put some lag bolts through, and the ledger board is on there, and you basically are securing one structure to another structure. And if that connection is weak at all, that's when that back of that deck's going to fall down as soon as you put any people on it and stuff. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have all kinds of problems. And we also can see in here, we need to flash things properly. If we don't put the proper flashings and stuff on here, okay, so we can see flashings going on behind the wood here, coming down over the top of the ledger, having a drip edge come out here, okay? If you don't have that ledger board can start to rot. If that ledger board starts to rot, you're again in one of those catastrophic deck situations. So we need to make sure that things are flashed properly, running water to the appropriate locations to make sure that the wood that's a part of that structure stays in good shape. Okay. As far as the next piece goes, moving away from the ledger board is getting out into our beam. Okay. So lots of times back in the day when you're building a deck, you'll see someone attach a beam that looks like this. Okay. A 4x4 or 6x6 with 2 sandwich boards on it and a couple of lag bolts shoved through it. The shear strength on those lag bolts is not very good. The shear strength on those lag bolts is weak. And if you put a whole bunch of weight on there, those lag bolts are going to shear, they're going to break, you're going to have all kinds of problems. And the deck by itself, you're talking about probably 5,000 to 8,000 pounds of lumber for a 10 by 15 deck. Okay, not a big deck, but it's probably 5,000 to 8,000 pounds of lumber and materials that are in that deck. And then you go start stacking a bunch of people on it. Okay, you got
furniture and grills and
everything else. Yeah, I mean, you got 10 people on there. Let's assume an average weight of 200 pounds. You're talking about another 2,000 pounds on that deck. Okay, so we got to be careful when we're attaching the deck to the beam. The beam needs to be resting on the piece of lumber. Tammy, can you switch over to the computer again for me? So this is an example of a bad one. This is an example of a good one. So on this one here, we can see the beam that goes across there is resting on the piece of structure that's the column that's going down to the ground. And then you can see that red stuff on top is actually the waterproof barrier. So that's basically going to deflect the water off the top of the piece of wood down and around it so it can go away and dry out. So that's a good example of what a good beam situation might be. So here's another good beam connection. You can see where they have the 2 pieces of outer rim joist resting on the 6x6, okay? And that transfers any loads from above directly down into that column and down into the soil where it needs to go, okay? You can see also in this example, they're using the proper joist hangers and stuff like that. So lots of good pieces and parts built into this thing. The transfer of load is what you got to be worried about. So how's that weight getting down to the ground? And if it's not through strong, stable structure, it's going to be a problem. All right. So that's the beam. The next thing we get into is how the columns are transferring that load into the soil. So this is one of the newer things. This is a diamond pier. So these diamond piers require no digging of any kind. You basically put this diamond pier down. Let me get to it. So this is what a bigger one looks like. You basically put this piece of concrete on the ground there. Sometimes you put a little bit of gravel underneath it, but you're going to drive these 4 poles down into the ground through these holes, and then you put these little rubber caps over the top of them. You need to be able to have a pipe, though, so that the inspector can stick their tape measure down into there. But that's another good beam connection there. You can see that sucker right over the top of that using good brackets and stuff like that. And then where's another diamond pier one? So this is what it looks like. So you can see those pipes, or they're calling them pins here, are going down into the soil. And then you can put your column right on top of that sucker. So there you can see where they put the bracket to hold to support the column right here. And there's a leg bolt, not a leg bolt, it's a anchor bolt in the middle there. Really cool stuff. And I'm starting to see them on more and more decks. I was over at Eastside Lumber the other day, and they are selling like hotcakes. Like people are buying them left and right. No dealing with messing with big rocks in the ground or anything like that. You do still need to be cautious that you're having Digger's Hotline come out and that they're making sure that there's no underground power lines or underground gas lines and stuff like that in the area. But man, is it making a deck work faster. From a guy that used to build decks. That was my summer job. I had a quality fence and deck. We built decks and fences and exterior structures and stuff. Man, I can't tell you, I was so sick of rocks. Hitting those rocks with that big breaker bar gave me carpal tunnel and all kinds of other issues, you know. The 3 places that you cannot make mistakes, okay? Your ledger board, your beam to column connection, and your soil to column connection. Those 3 points, if you mess up a joist, the deck's not coming down. Okay, you mess up a joist or 2. Okay, the deck's gonna have a problem that's fixable, but odds of somebody getting injured significantly is very low. If you have a strong ledger connection, you have a strong beam connection, you have a strong connection to the soil, odds are your deck's going to be nice and stable. Okay, but you got to follow basic building practices, and if you want to make your deck cool, better, use different type of decking materials and stuff. That's all great. That's aesthetics. That's not function. Function is strong ledger board, strong beam connection, strong connection to the ground, okay? Use your proper hangers and things like that. We're going to do a whole thing on decks. We have a deck guy coming in a couple months or whatever. We're going to just do nothing but break down decks. And if you don't know what deck flashing is, if you don't know what a lateral support strap is, Tammy, you can put the computer back up for me? That thing right there, if you don't know what a lateral support strap is or what it does or how to put it in, if you don't know how to do that, you shouldn't be building your deck. Okay, that is an essential piece. And yes, anybody can go to the store, anybody can buy a bunch of screws and a bunch of wood and go to their home and build something. Okay, but you're going to put your family, friends, and kids and relatives and everybody else on this deck, and you're going to put their life at risk. You can save money, but you need to be willing to spend some money to get some professional advice. The deck construction guys, they'd be happy to come out and you pay them a couple $100 to help you draw up your plan or show them your plan, and they'll make tweaks and corrections to it and make suggestions. Probably the best couple $100 you're going to spend, and decks aren't cheap. I mean, you build a deck, you're talking $5,000 to $10,000 at least, you know? So that is our defect of the week. If you're going to build a deck this summer, start planning now and make sure you follow all the procedures to build a nice, safe deck that you and your family can enjoy for years to come. Really appreciate you tuning in today. If you haven't been checking out our videos, you go to our YouTube page, Helpful Home Inspector. We have our website out there, helpfulhomeinspector.com, with lots of good suggestions for contractors and things like that. Lots of good tips and tricks to help you better maintain and take care of your home. Lots of good stuff in there. Also, if you have any questions that you would like to get us to answer on a Saturday morning show, you can put those questions in on our website. And when you put those questions in, we'll make sure to get on those the next Saturday so we can talk about those with everybody and bring the knowledge to them. Also, our podcast goes up on every Monday, where you can hear the podcast of the show and re-listen to us. But anywhere you get your podcast stuff, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Alexa, whatever it may be, you can go out there and you can get the Helpful Home Inspector. iHeartRadio is probably the one I use the most often, but lots of good stuff out there, you guys. Thanks again for tuning in. This is the Helpful Home Inspector. Remember, you guys, better you take care of your house, better it's going to take care of you. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.